Hello everyone, this is Skin Over the Carnotaurus. I would like to thank you all for joining me today. I hope your day has been wonderful and that good luck reaches you. Today, we're talking about ARK. ARK Survival Evolved is a franchise that I have had a very intimate relationship with at this point in time. I've had an on and off relationship with the game, liking a lot of things, not liking a lot of others, but overall it's my most played game. Period. The most recent few years in particular have been a very big boon for ARK. Genesis 2, in my opinion, is by far the best DLC. Lost Island and Fjordor are by far the best unofficial maps, and then you have all the new creatures added due to the community votes. The community votes have been a really fun way to get the community involved with new creature additions, even if there's been a few hiccups along the way. The Lost Island vote has seen us receive Dinopithecus, while the vote for Fjordor has given us the giant vampire bat. There have also been some creatures added from the vote that didn't win, but Wildcard handpicked them out for other reasons. Cynomacrops was very much a dev's favorite during the Lost Island vote, so it got added and became the best shoulder pet in the entire game. Carcharodontosaurus was a very dominant contender throughout both the Lost Island and Fjordor votes, so Wildcard decided to add it to the game as the final creature for ARK 1. Supposedly. You see, back on the 13th, Wildcard announced another creature vote from seemingly nowhere, to where another creature is going to be added to the game. The current headcanon that isn't confirmed to be true, but everyone basically universally agrees is true, is that ARK 2 has probably been delayed for a second time. So, to keep the community occupied in the meantime, the devs have decided to port ARK over to Unreal Engine 5 and add a new creature along the way. Solid plan, not really complaining. While I'm writing and producing this video during the entry phase of the vote, rather than during the voting stage itself, which is on the 23rd when this video uploads, all the top 10 that will be in the main vote have largely seemed to be decided on at this point. So it seems like a perfect time for me to finally discuss all the contestants and say what I think would be the best addition to the game. Before I do anything else, however, I need to set a bit of a disclaimer. The ability for YouTubers to cast their opinion and influence votes has been a major subject of controversy during these votes, for very understandable reasons, I think. As a result, if it is your first time even hearing about the vote and you want to contribute, or you really wouldn't like me to influence your decision, or both, then I have left the links for the vote and their entries in the description. Please, if you feel so inclined, you can vote now and watch the video later. There's also the big reveal that the creature that I suggested is in the top 10. So to make myself as unbiased as possible, my creature will not be on the tier list. I'll instead discuss my creature at the very end, with the 10th creature spot instead being filled by the one currently in 11th place, because 10th and 11th are the ones currently fighting the most, so they're probably the most subject to change. You can easily just disregard which one didn't actually make it when the voting comes. Alright, with that out of the way, let us begin. This tier list is very much subjective, by the way. That should be a very easy thing to figure out. It's what I think. From this tier list, you'll be able to figure out what my votes are going for either way. I think a good way to do this is to go in order from what got the least to most votes during the entry phase. Keep in mind that the votes in the entry phase say nothing about how the actual vote will go. Cynomacrops was number 1 during the entry phase of Lost Island, but Dinopithecus won. The giant bison was number 1 during the entry phase of the Fjordor vote, but the giant bat won. In the voting phase, it's anybody's game, so don't let that influence your decisions. Regardless, the current bottoms of the entry phase are Deinocheirus and Enhydriodon, otherwise known as the giant otter. I'm starting with the Deinocheirus because I think it is the very bottom of the barrel in terms of the votes, and by far the worst of the top 10. Deinocheirus as a species in ARK is not warranted. There are already over half a dozen large theropods in the game, we really don't need another. The suggestion also wants it to be Giga size as well. Do we really need Giga number 3 at this point, right after we got Giga number 2? Finally, for those that like Deinocheirus, we don't need to worry anyway, because it is coming in the ARK Editions mod very soon. As a result, Deinocheirus is going in F tier. Out of all the creatures in the top 10, this is the one that I would find unacceptable. All the rest of the creatures are generally a lot more interesting. As the top 10's only dinosaur as well, I have been very happy that this vote has done a lot more creative and obscure choices, rather than just a lot of different, oh my god, so much cool dinosaurs, etc. Next up is the giant otter. which I am not too impressed with either. We already have one otter, so in terms of originality it is not the greatest, and the suggested abilities feel all over the place. It has a roll rat-like saddle to protect itself and be a submarine, while also being able to sense creatures around it, having piranhas and other similar annoyances scared by it, and at being a good gatherer and having a pack bonus. It feels kind of unfocused. On top of this, it has come out, since the post was submitted, that this person who created it is a sexual harasser of minors in the ARK community. Yeah, this is a very serious thing that happened, and I cannot talk about this creature without bringing it up. I'm sorry to change the mood so significantly, but this had to be stated. Say what you will about the art versus artist, but this creature will never be able to live past why it was added to ARK in the first place if it does make it in. As a result, D tier. I am going to talk about the next two creatures together because I have a similar opinion about them. These creatures are the giant cheetah and the Razanandrongobe. Jesus, that is a name. I am simply going to call it Razan from this point forward. The giant cheetah is a very real creature, being in the same genus as the modern cheetah. It lived in Eurasia during the Ice Age and is about double the size of the cheetahs we know. It was suggested in the votes to basically be a galley that doesn't suck. It would be very similar in speed to the Gallimimus, while also being able to actually turn. It has also been suggested to slow down targets, insinuating how cheetahs often trip their prey when they're chasing them. A solid idea while also being a creature type that you don't see too much of. Smilodon is the only other cat in the game after all. Meanwhile, Razan has surprised me for being in the top 10, considering that it's potentially the most obscure creature on this entire list. However, I would happily welcome a land crocodilian. Sarcosuchus is pretty generic in its role, and while Sarcosuchus is terrestrial, they are still very much associated with water. The person who suggested this has told me that one of the points to suggesting Razan was so there would be more croc diversity, and having a land equivalent is very appreciated. In terms of abilities, it is suggested that while it's not as big, or exactly as good purely in stats as the T-Rex, its DPS can more than easily compete with it, and it is heavily armored, allowing it to withstand projectiles like bullets and physical attacks at creatures, particularly Shadow Mains. Out of all the creatures in the top 10, this is the one that found its niche as being a potential Shadow Main counter. I think both of these creatures are really cool, but nothing about them really screams out to me compared to the best of the entries. As a result, they are both in B tier. Next up in the vote is the giant pterosaur Hatzegopteryx. For being the only pterosaur in the top 10, I am unimpressed with its suggested abilities. Hatzegopteryx has been proposed as the ultimate aerial tame, being an aggressive apex aerial predator. After the addition of Carcharodontosaurus, I am very much tired of endgame top tier Goliaths whose main proposition is how well they murder things. However, I do have to give props for it, when tamed, essentially being proposed to act like a bomber plane, having a saddle that works like a Tropianatus, but firing grenades from below rather than from the front. Flying in really quickly and dropping explosives from above is a pretty cool image. However, I do have to finish off by saying that I am not a fan of the proposed design either. The idea of Hatzeg being the lighter and sleeker flyer to Ketz very much goes against the spirit of Hatzegopteryx in my opinion, who is the bruiser of the pterosaurs. I also think it's staying robust, but looking akin to a bomber jet in flight would be a much cooler image than was being suggested. Hatzeg is going in C tier. This next one I am going to try to go through quick, because I think that Ranioneta is one of the poorest suggestions in the entire top 10. I will say though, the design is fucking sick. The design inspiration being a combination of insect and centipede, its two debated identities, is a very nice touch, along with it being just the perfect combination of cool and very, very freaky and nasty. However, this is the only creative bone that the creature has in its body. Rhinonathia, according to what is suggested, would be able to do literally everything. It is a giant, extremely powerful predator, nicknamed the Sky Giga, that can both fly and swim very well, having very good carry weight. Everything in the ocean leaves it alone. It is a very good gatherer of materials from creatures, and it passively produces resources itself. You can see the problem here, right? This creature can do nothing wrong, and basically has no weaknesses. Not only is it unrealistic to expect Wildcard to faithfully translate this creature into the main game, but it also feels like Rhinio is pandering for votes. It is literally everything players would want, with no downsides, so it's no wonder people are voting for it. Rhinonathia is also only in the top 10 to begin with because it was boosted in popularity by Loaded Crisis. who is also a horrible human being that uses ARK to clickbait and as a content farm. So you want to stay clear regardless. Easy D tier. I will go on record saying that these next 4 creatures are by far the best for me, and I would adore any of these making it into the game. The first 2 up are Myotragus and the Giant Bison. I will always welcome more herbivores, and these 2 have a lot of useful suggestions. The idea for Myotragus as the ultimate scouter is very cool, allowing it to scout out particular nearby resources and creatures, as well as explore nodes too. There has been some worry about it being primarily early game, but I don't really see the problem with that. Creatures can still have their place while not exactly being the most useful in the late game. Just look at raptors and direwolves, which everybody love. The Giant Bison, I feel, has lost a bit of its popularity, since it very much fit with Fjordor in particular, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have merit. It's very much suggested to be the cow of the ARK, giving milk, cheese, pulling heavy loads, and also being a decently powerful mount to boot. To be perfectly honest, the only reason I put the Giant Bison so highly, on top of it being a herbivore, is because it has consistently been a very popular creature, appearing in both top 10s prior and losing both times. If the Giant Bison got added to ARK, I feel like it would be very much deserved. Both are S tier. Next up is Nothosaurus. Nothosaurus is an interesting case, because the very first suggestion for it kind of sucks. No offense to the artist and person that suggested it, but just being able to fertilize unfertilized eggs is kinda pointless. It is the suggestion underneath it, which is why Nothosaurus is so high. This design is fucking amazing, and I would love Nothosaurus to come to ARK if it's like this. Triassic creatures are painfully underrepresented in ARK, the only Triassic creature currently being Lystrosaurus, and Nothosaurus being the only primarily aquatic creature in the top 10 on top of that is superb. The main downside of Note though I can think of is that its ability to help with fishing is not the best ability in the world. I am very much more in love with its look and the thought of Nothosaurus than its abilities. A tier. Finally, we got the top member of the top 10 entries, the Bastion Beetle. I am saying with complete confidence that, out of the top 10, this is the most creative of the suggestions by far. As stated by the suggestion, the Bastion Beetle is found in the wild as these grubs that you passive tame. They are an incredibly long maturation process, but in the meantime as babies, they still have uses. As shoulder pets, they make you more resistant to poisons, and act as bug repellent if you give them organic polymer to eat. As they pupate and become adults, they are absolute monsters. The male and female are different. While they can both climb and fly, they have different uses. The male is the heavy lifter, with its large horns allowing it to pick up large creatures and do heavy knockback, along with having much greater reach in its attacks. The female, meanwhile, is more of the melee combatant, doing more damage with her bite at the cost of reduced range, while also being much more armored and being able to carry structures. They both are also able to have weapons equipped to their saddles, the male having dual miniguns and the female having a 90mm tank cannon, creating some of the best images you will find on the internet. Also, their chitin can upgrade armor. You see why the suggestion has gotten so much attention? It's great. However, there was a problem. While I would very much love this creature to come to the game, it's kind of hard to ignore that its suggestion not only feels pretty broken, also a lot of the aspects that make it so great also feel kind of unrealistic to expect for the devs to faithfully recreate an ARK. They didn't give us the monkey with gun when Dinopithecus was added after all. I'll be putting this beetle in S tier because it's still amazing, but I do unfortunately have to rank it lower than the hoof stock for this reason. I really hope they keep it faithful to the beetle if it does get added. Alright everyone, that was my tier list. I hope you all enjoyed. Oh yeah, that's right. There is the creature that I suggested to add to ARK, which got in the top 10. This tier list may be over, but let's talk about him, shall we? The Gorgonopsid is a creature I feel should have been added to ARK a long time ago. It's always been the creature that I've always felt is very iconic that has not been in the game, and it is the only Paleozoic creature and stem mammal in the top 10. And stem mammals aren't best represented in ARK in general. The only ones in ARK at the moment are the Lystrosaurus, Dimetrodon, Perlovia, and Moschops, and Moschops is the only one that is writable. The Gorgonopsid is also the only creature that was ever hard confirmed to be added to ARK that never did, so I feel like this is deserved retribution as well. Those are just the entitlements though. What about what it would do? I imagine the Gorgonopsid to be a medium-sized predatory tame, similar in size to Thylacoleo, so it would be decently powerful. However, that is not all it can do. I have received some criticism about Gorgonopsid seeming like just another Thyla or Direwolf. However, I made the suggestion with the intention of it being more than just another combat mount. While it being decently powerful is cool, that's not why you'd want it. I think Gorgonopsid would be great as the game's Bloodhound, having the best smell on the ARK, and it would have different abilities based on this. First up, by holding its sniff ability, a crosshair would appear on the screen. When released on a player or creature, regardless of how far away it is from you, or what it is, whether it's enemy or friend, it doesn't matter, you will have its scent. Now, no matter where you are on the map, when riding the Gorgonopsid, you'll be able to track down the scent and find them. This would make it useful in finding lost tames, or in PvP to track down players at a distance without them even knowing about it. Since this can be a bit overpowered, I did suggest some counters. Players would be notified when they're being tracked, and while they wouldn't get the same heads up for if somebody's tracking their tames, the Gorgons would also lose the scent if they're put in a cryopod. Another big ability is its wounding bite, which is not what you think it is. This bite would leave a wound on the target, but it's not a debuff like bleed or anything like that. Instead, this allows the Gorgon to get a stronger scent, and see the stats of that creature, akin to HLNA on Genesis. This would be incredibly useful for players looking for good tames, on top of it sensing weaknesses in combat. Those are the two big abilities I would want, but there are a few others proposed by myself and the general community, like sniffing out high-level creatures, explorer notes, explosives and hazards, along with other abilities and different ways to sniff out creatures and players. I would suggest going to the description to read the full proposal on Gorgonopsid down below, along with all the others in the top 10. What team are you guys on? I am obviously on Team Gorgonopsid, totally biased, but I do wonder what the rest of you would like in the game. Tell me about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's see who wins the vote. I would like to thank Carnotaurus Dino and Stringosaurus Gun 233 for their very generous Patreon donations. It means the world to me. Have a good day, everyone.